The second reset of tier 11 has gone by, which means for me it is raid review time. Now this is something I've been doing since Classic came out really. At the end of the second reset I'll look back through the raid, see how difficult it's shaped up to be, which bosses are proving problematic, and sharing my own experiences in the raid so far. In the past we've definitely had some challenging tiers such as tier 5, all the while with its hard modes, and of course above all so far, Wrath of the Lich King's Ice-Crowned Citadel with the Lich King fight himself. Cataclysm raids were hyped up to be the hardest so far, so has that proven true for the opening tier in tier 11? And I was a bit concerned heading into Cata after hearing Blizzard say that the raids were going to be post-nerf. However, now having played them through, we know that isn't the case. They're not entirely in the same state they were on launch, and they have been nerfed comparatively, but not to the point where they're just absolutely face roll, especially on heroic. Cataclysm's also had a solid start raiding wise in terms of population, with nearly 300,000 individual characters having been logged, as according to Ironforge.pro. And I've said it plenty of times, but for somebody who's looking to mainly raid and that being the main attraction of the expansion, Cataclysm is going to be a good time for that. There's also something else worth a mention. This happened in the past and it's begun to repeat itself, and that's the complete faction imbalance in high-end PvE and PvP for that matter due to racial bonuses. Do you want to have a guess how many alliance guilds there are in the top 100 clears of tier 11 so far? Interestingly, it's the same number for both heroic 10 and 25, even though it's not the same guilds. But yeah, out of the top 100 guilds to clear the content, 17 are Alliance. If only somebody made a video over a year ago explaining why this happened and why it will be a thing in Classic at a much faster rate if nothing changed. I know Blizzard said they were more open to changes in Cata, but at this point the snowball is rolling and I don't know what's gonna stop it. Nevertheless, I have been super happy with how tier 11 has played out so far. I put it on a pedestal going into the expansion, which is often a dumb thing to do because it can only lead to disappointment, but this time around I feel as though it really has paid off. Apart from one or two issues, which we'll get onto when we talk bosses. I was going to include normal mode data here, but it's just all over the place because I think a lot of people don't log. But both from seeing data online, as well as own personal experience from the PTR, the normal mode is pretty easy and should be very accessible, with only Nefarian potentially proving a challenge. Also, all the data I'll be going over will be based off of Warcraft log progression kills, which means the first kill is a majority guild group. Anyway, with all that said, let's make a start and check out how difficult tier 11 has been. But first, a quick word from today's sponsor, Boot.dev. Boot.dev is a platform that aims to equip you with the skills to forge a career in back-end development through interactive lessons and learning. It aims to keep this journey more interactive and goal-driven by bringing in RPG-type features such as experience, achievements, and even leaderboards to keep you motivated to progress. Boot.dev offers the tools to get fully on board with the Python and Go programming languages. It does this through hands-on learning, where you're going to be writing tons of your own code so that you can get a grasp of the fundamentals from the basics to more advanced lessons. On top of that, all the content is free to view and watch in guest mode, and there's even a 30-day no questions asked refund policy. So even if you're just interested in checking out how Boot works and want to see more before you commit, you can very much do that. Click the link in the description box below and use my code WillE to get 25% off your first payment for Boot.dev. That'll be 25% your first month or your first year, depending on the subscription you choose. Many thanks to Boot.dev for the sponsor today. Let's get back to WoW. First up we have Halphus Wormbreaker, with 1,405 kills on 25 heroic and a 17.1% kill to pull ratio. He also caused just shy of 29,000 wipes. For the opening boss of Bastion of Twilight, this one can provide a good challenge. The difficulty of the encounter is really front loaded and you just need to send everything at the start of the fight, and you'll have a pretty good idea whether you're going to end up killing the boss in the first minute or two of the fight, as opposed to it being a race to the end during the final few percentages, as many bosses are this tier. It's a fun encounter as you can just do crazy numbers on the boss when he has the debuff stacking up, and it really teaches you the value of pressing your defensive cooldowns for both healers and tanks early on into the expansion. I'd say it's not the easiest fight, but it's definitely one that you should start on. Next we have Archimedes, which on Heroic had 1,199 kills on 25, a 22% kill to pull ratio, and caused just under 19,000 wipes. Now this boss is the easiest Heroic in my opinion by far. If he wasn't in the main circle in BWD, this guy would be the most killed boss. It's just the other two bosses before him holding people up a little bit, and considering that he drops them great loot, this should definitely be a boss you take on early whilst you're doing Heroics. Mechanics wise, not that much has changed from normal mode to be honest. You just have a bit of a bigger DPS check since Nefarian will destroy a gong when you use it, you have an ad that you need to deal with, and you gain way more sound when you get hit by a mechanic. Other than that, it really is just playing the normal fight and executing it fairly well. After that we have Magmor with 1,111 kills on 25 Heroic, with a 8.5% kill to pull ratio. And this boss caused the most wipes out of any of them this tier so far, and honestly I'm not surprised, because despite being one of the opening bosses of the tier, Magmor hits really hard. This fight needs good coordination on many different levels, from dealing with the parasites before they get out of control, positioning requirements so mechanics don't happen to your melee stack, and of course a big test on your healers. This fight will have you see who's adapted to Cataclysm's new style of healing, and who still thinks pressing Holy Light for 5 minutes will cut it. All the same, this is one of the easier fights when you get the mechanics down, and is only going to get easier with gear. The Omnitron defense system had 918 kills on Heroic 25 with an 11.5% kill to pull ratio. It also caused just over 28,000 wipes. Technically another opening tier boss for the expansion. It does have quite a few of them to be fair, but this boss has some serious hands. Omnitron features 4 bosses that rotate during the fight, where 2 of them are active, and each of the bosses will test your raid in different ways, from needing raid healing to focusing ads, interrupting, and of course making sure you're hitting the right one at the right time so not to cause one of their shields to explode and instantly wipe your raid. It's a hard fight to explain because there's just a lot of stuff happening at the same time and a lot of different visual things going on your screen. It's one where you're best just pulling it and getting everyone to grips with what can happen and how different mechanics can overlap. This boss can be hard, but it basically has no berserk timer, you have forever to kill it, so even a few remaining players can get you just about over the finish line. A pretty fun fight and a one I would take on early. Next is Chimaeron with 806 kills on 25 Heroic, a 15.1% kill to pull ratio, and just over 18,000 wipes caused. Now this is a bit of a gimmick boss fight where essentially everything the boss does one-shots you, but as long as your health remains above 10,000, you have a buff which prevents you from dying. So it really does test your healers on their ability to spot heal, as well as not overhealing so they don't waste their mana. Occasionally the little robot giving you the buff preventing death fails for a few moments. At this point the fight turns into a big old stack up and spam AoE heals before resetting back to your original positions. This fight's really on your tanks understanding when to taunt to prevent the double attack from globaling someone, your healers being good with spot healing, and your DPS pushing out enough numbers and staying spread correctly. At 20% the boss fight becomes a race to the finish. If you get to this phase with enough people though, this one is definitely easy to do. Next we have Maloriak with 780 kills on 25 Heroic. He has a kill to pull ratio of 20.6% and caused just under 11,900 wipes. I think it's here where things can start to get a bit more difficult, and I say can because Maloriak is a fight where you need to play patient. It's kind of hard to outgear it, even if you do outgear it. So during the fight, the boss is going to free these ads from the side of the room, and they have to be killed off as they buff one another, and you don't want too many out at the same time. If you push the boss too fast, he's not going to have released enough ads, and then in the final phase, he will release all of the remaining ads, and you're going to wipe really fast. Other than that, it's mechanically not too difficult of a fight, with simple mechanics needing you to stack back or spread. It really is just working out the pacing of the adds and what feels right. Sometimes you do need to just delay the boss from hitting the final phase for a good minute or so, just so you can have the adds dealt with. It's still an interesting fight. I just hope it doesn't turn into Vezax 2.0, where we're doing so much damage we're just sitting around waiting for those last few adds to spawn. Next is Valiona and Thoralion, with 569 kills on 25 heroic, a kill to pull ratio of 8%, and the cause of nearly 25,000 wipes. The double dragons are where things are another step up once again, and that's going to be a trend moving forwards. Functionally, this fight is not much different from normal other than the damage of everything being way higher, but the Twilight Realm now spawns adds, which people have to go down via getting hit with spells to deal with them. Typically people use rogues for this, but a bunch of different classes can work, because if your ad group downstairs fails, you're going to get overwhelmed upstairs really fast. This one's a real control fight, which is all about being at the right place at the right time, and though I'd say it's a midpoint in terms of difficulty, this should be a good one to progress. Next is Conclave of the Four Winds with 537 kills on 25 heroic, a kill to pull ratio of 6.7%, and the cause of 24,500 wipes. Okay, I had to have a boss that I'd have a problem with eventually, and this is it. This is the worst fight of the tier for me. I don't think it's just about Conclave itself as a fight per se. I think for me it's boss fights that force you to split your raid into multiple groups from the get-go. So think of Spoils of Pandaria, the treasure room in Battle for Desaralor, I don't know, maybe there are other ones. The thing is, it's often going fine for you on your platform, but other platforms have problems, and you just have to wipe again and again, and you're not even sure why you're wiping or what's going wrong. Oftentimes, if everyone's standing together, you could have done something to help out, or maybe seen something that's going wrong, but here you're standing on another platform and you have no idea what the problem is, and it's just kind of frustrating to wipe like that. The fight itself has two platforms with lower health bosses that gradually need to be worn down before most of the raid jumps to the back platform where there's a boss with loads more health that you nuke down during their special attack. Every time we do this boss, I just hope it's a one shot so we don't start wiping for some mysterious reason, which is gonna take several pulls to figure out. Following that, we have Cho'gall with 251 kills on 25 heroic with a kill to pull ratio of 8%, and he was the cause of about 9,400 wipes. For an end boss, kind of, but not really, he's not too bad in terms of difficulty. The corruption mechanic on heroic is far more punishing, but you can have mages get max corruption on purpose as soon as possible, allowing them to do crazy damage throughout the fight, and then you just heal them mainly through absorbs. This fight is quite stressful to heal early on, and you really can't have people eating damage from mechanics that they shouldn't be doing. Other than that, it's quite a simple and straightforward fight. When the boss reaches low health, he rapidly increases everyone's corruption, and it's a race to the end. On top of that, adds start spawning everywhere, and things just get out of control pretty much instantly. Still, I thought this was a good boss to progress on and provided a good challenge. Now we're into the final few bosses, and this is where things start to get even more difficult. This is where the WoW will begin. The Ascendant Council had 219 kills on 25 heroic with a kill to pull ratio of 4.6% and caused just about 13,900 wipes. Ascendant Council back in the day was a notorious wall of a fight, and in Cataclysm it's proving to be that once again. There are 4 bosses in total and you fight 2 at once, each of which have their own mechanics which are cancelled out by the other's mechanics. You need to clear your water stacks with fire, get rid of the lightning debuff via being grounded, and so on and so forth. When one of the bosses in phase 1 reaches 25% health, the next set of 2 will come down, with even more dangerous mechanics. And pretty much everything in phase 2 will one-shot you, and possibly even the raid if you do it wrong. From not being spread out enough with chain lightning, having the wrong buff when the boss does its big AoE attack, or getting hit by a frost orb, even small mistakes are very heavily punished here. But the real fight begins when the bosses merge all their health together and become the Elementium monstrosity. This is the race to the end part of the boss fight, where the boss deals massive AoE damage which ramps up very fast. You need to have pretty much every single cooldown in the game ready to go for this part, and even still you'll probably just about get your first kill a couple of seconds before you wipe. For me, this is a really good council boss. It's challenging, there's personal responsibility, you can make individual plays that help other people out, and there's a lot of coordination needed, and when you finally get it down, it feels super satisfying. Following that, we have Alakia, who had 197 kills on Heroic 25, with a kill to pull ratio of 5.1%, and having caused 11,500 wipes. Now, Alakia is a heroic boss where the difficulty is back to front. You're going to be spending most of your time wiping in phase 1, and phase 1 only lasts till 80% on the boss's health bar for some reason. Phase 1 needs your entire raid to be spread out on the platform, or lightning strike will just instantly wipe you. This phase of the fight can also be extremely heavy on RNG. You can have lightning strike, a tornado wall, and a knockback to deal with at the same time. And for some classes, it just feels as though the boss has decided you're going to die, and there's not that much that you can do about it. For real though, don't hold back with cooldowns in phase 1, especially during progression, because this will take some getting used to. Phase 2 is a bit of a burn and control phase. The boss deals more and more AoE raid damage and summons adds, and when these adds die, they put a debuff on the boss, and the boss just needs to be low enough to trigger phase 3 before you get overwhelmed and people take too much damage. The last phase is the easiest phase of this fight by far. You just need to stack and move when a lightning cloud appears, and move out of the raid with the lightning rod. I'd say as soon as you have phase 2 looking good and that you're going to be progressing on to phase 3 pretty soon, swap the boss back to normal and just go and practice the final phase. It's going to make things much easier for you. Following that, we have Sinestra, who had 165 kills on 25 heroic with a kill to pull ratio of 6.8% and caused about 7,150 wipes. A hidden end boss at the end of the tier, but not really the hardest boss of any tier, I would say. If you can do Ascendant Council, you can do Cho'gall, and I think you can do Sinestra as well. Also, this boss drops item level 379 loot as well, so that's a bit of an extra incentive for you. This fight is really all about understanding their cutters. 2 orbs spawn near people and then send a beam between them, which if that connects with anyone is going to instantly kill them. Rack can also take a bit of learning. This is a debuff which when dispelled spreads to 2 new players, but the amount of damage it's doing is also reset, so you want to leave it ticking quite a while and not dispel it too early. And then phase 3 is another race to the finish, which there's quite a few of this tier. You get a massive buff that gives you tons of haste and essentially infinite mana if you're a healer, and the boss is going to need to die pretty quickly after this debuff wears off, or you're just going to get overwhelmed. I'd say it's a solid fight, definitely not the hardest one in the tier though, and it just is really about learning and understanding the cutters. Which means last but not least, we have Nefarian's End. With 162 kills on 25 heroic, a 5.5% kill to pull ratio, and the cause of nearly 9,000 wipes. So this is the hardest boss of the tier by a good margin, both for good and unfortunately also bad reasons. The main new heroic mechanic has you walk towards these portals, and during this time you can spam a button for a damage and heal buff, but if you reach the portal you'll die. This extra damage is going to help you push the boss by a lot. And the fight itself starts off with both Onyxia and Nefarian as well as adds, and is pretty chill for the beginning, I would say. Phase 2 is where the bad part of the fight is. So there's an effect that happens where lava appears to be coming up from the floor, which enables you to jump on these platforms and deal with some adds. Unfortunately, if you spam your spacebar when this lava is going up, there's a pretty high chance you're going to be disconnected from the game. When you do this fight, the advice I give you, this goes for normal too by the way, just swim upwards and then jump on the platform when you're on the surface. Spamming spacebar is just rolling a dice whether or not you're going to disconnect. But you get on the platform, deal with the ad, don't blow up the raid, and then phase 3 starts, and honestly this is where the fight starts at this point in time. I should have also mentioned every time you do 10% of Nefarian's health, he does about 130,000 damage to the entire raid. So the faster you're pushing the boss, the faster these come out, and you need some kind of defensive and to be at max health for every single one just to be safe. But phase 3 is all about ad control, while the raid gradually wears the boss down. Whilst these ads are active, they keep getting a stacking damage and movement speed buff, and if they touch any of the fire in the room, they reset their buff, and it's basically a wipe. As for the fire, Nefarian breathes fire, of course, he's a dragon, and he will also periodically throw fire at the ads to try and reset their stacks, and it's super important they're being moved when this happens. Getting the pacing of the fight correct for the ads is really what makes this difficult. Also, the tank on the ads is going to be taking absolutely crazy amounts of damage. And for this specifically, warrior tank is often used. It was back in the day as well, interestingly enough. Despite not being as meta of a tank this expansion, warrior is great at dealing with physical damage, which is what these ads do, and they can stun them with shockwave and leap away with heroic leap when they need to be kited. It's an odd scenario where the protection warrior is the perfect pick, but you're looking for about 2 resets on these ads before things start to turn into chaos and you're just trying to finish the boss. Overall though, I did like this fight, it's just a shame about the disconnection issues. And that's it for tier 11. For me, it has lived up to expectations, and I'm going to be doing plenty of raiding on a bunch of different characters this tier. Difficulty wise, it is the hardest tier of raiding we've seen so far, with only a few fights on heroic which really feel as though they're freebies, which are easy enough to get some loot from. Saying that, no boss still comes close to Lich King by the end of the second reset in Wrath. He only had 61 kills at that point in time, whereas Nefarian's on 162 on 25 heroic. So the hardest classic boss for me so far still has to go to Lich King 0%, but tier 11 as a group of content is definitely more challenging than ICC. There is also quite a big jump between normal mode and heroic mode as well, but as you gradually gear up, some of those fights are going to start seeming a little bit easier. But then again, a lot of these heroic fights are very mechanics focused, and gear will only do so much. Nevertheless, those are the stats for tier 11 and my thoughts on it so far. Let me know how your progression's going, how the raid's been for you, has it lived up to expectations, do you not like it for whatever reason, anything like that in the comments down below. And, as always, thank you all so much for watching and listening in, and I'll see you on the next one very soon.